to wake up in the morning to the quiet of the cove and hear Aunt Bessie talking to herself, and to hear poor Uncle John mumbling wishes to old Nell. It made me feel like everything was fine. I was born down by the water, it's here I'm gonna stay. I've searched for all the reasons why I should go away, but I haven't got the thirst for all those modern day toys, so I'll just take my chances with those saltwater joys. Following a little brook as it trickles to the shore in the autumn when the trees are flaming red, kicking leaves that fall around me, watching sunset paint the hills. It's all I'll ever need to feel at home. This island that we cling to has been handed down with pride by folks who fought to live here, taking hardships all in stride. So I'll compliment her beauty, hold on to my goodbyes, and I'll stay and take my chances with those saltwater joys. How can I leave those mornings with the sunrise on the cove and the gulls like flies surrounding Clayton's wharf? Platter's Island wrapped in rainbow in the evening after fog. The ocean smells are perfume to my soul. Some go to where the buildings reach to meet the clouds, where warm and gentle people turn to swarming faceless crowds. So I'll do without their riches, glamour and the noise, and I'll stay and take my chances with those saltwater toys. Some go to where the buildings reach to meet the clouds, where warm and gentle people turn to swarming faceless crowds. So I'll do without their riches, glamour and the noise, and I'll stay and take my chances with those saltwater joys.
Good evening, and welcome to This Week in Review. Tonight, our stories are vandalism at the whole school building, walk to breakfast, boys AAA provincial ball tournament, an interview with our MHA Calvin Parsons. Please stay tuned for these stories after this.
When you use a War Amps key tag, you support child amputees like Morgan. This busy girl wears 2 artificial legs and a myoelectric arm. She has learned from the experiences of war amputees like Cliff Chatterton. Through the years, the War Amps has been there, easing her path on the road to independence. Your donations to the key tag service have helped put Morgan in the winner's circle.
Even though it's hard to do something, you keep on trying. Don't give up at all.
On Monday of this week, Mr. Walt McDonald, who is the caretaker of the old St. John Central High School building, invited me over to the school to look at the vandalism that had taken place. The violators had gained entries through the door in the back by beating holes in the door and pushing up on the latch. It is also suspected that the entrance was also gained through a broken glass in a door in the back. Most of the damage, an estimated $10,000 worth, was done in the newer part of the building. There were glass and doors smashed in, Speakers and thermostats turned off the wall. Light tubing was beat up. Drinking fountains torn off the wall and beaten up. In one room, there were paper towels thrown over the floor. And in the home economics room, human waste products was found and a scoop that was used to throw it on the walls. This damage is suspected to have been done approximately 4 weeks ago. On Thursday morning, there was a walk to breakfast at Burgeo Academy. This was held from 8 a.m. to 8:45 a.m. Approximately 84 students took part in this breakfast. They were served by the snack program parents. The breakfast consists of pancakes of different flavors, fresh milk, apple and orange juice, and a variety of fresh fruits, apples, bananas, oranges, grapes, and cantaloupe. After the students had their fill and was gone to classes, the parents then sat together and enjoyed a breakfast and friendly chit-chat. It was well deserved. This breakfast was provided free of charge to the students by the Eat Smart Foundation. Excuse me. This breakfast was provided free of charge to the students by the Kids Eat Smart Foundation. And please remember, good eating equals good thinking. Friday, October 20th, marked the opening of the Boys AAA Provincial Softball Tournament. Approximately 94 boys are taking part in this tournament. The morning got on the way with opening ceremonies at Burgeo Academy in the gymnasium. Christopher Foss was the master of ceremonies. He started by introducing the out-of-town teams, and then the introduction of the home team. Once everyone was in, Mr. Penny welcomed everyone. The Burgeo Academy choirs then sang "Old Canada" and "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." The opening pitch was done by John Cabot Collegiate Cobras. The championship games was won by Twillingate. Mr. Calvin Parsons, MHA for Burgeo Lapile, dropped by our studio and had a few words to say. Today, we have in our studios with us our MHA, Mr. Calvin Parsons. Good day, Mr. Parsons, and welcome to our studio.
Thank you. Good to be here.
That's great.
I hear this is your first interview
Yes.
in your new position with the BBS.
Yes, it is.
Hopefully it'll be comfortable.
Well, I am a little bit nervous. So what brings you to Burgeo today?
Well, I come down, of course, quite regularly for my clinics, and I try to, I advertise it on the BBS when I'm coming into town. Many people deal with us by telephone, but of course there's also those circumstances where people want to meet with you face to face. They want to talk usually about private issues and such, so I make myself available to do that by way of clinics and give people notice and come down and spend the day meeting with them and getting the information that I want and need in order to deal with their issue and take it from there. But so that's my primary purpose of coming down, of course. And then I also, in conjunction with that, there's always people who want to see you not in a clinic situation. Some people want you to visit them at their home and deal with their matter. Sometimes it's because they can't get out and they'd like to meet with you, so I do go to their homes and meet with them, particularly seniors. And there's always other occasions. For example, if somebody has a special anniversary, like a 60th or a 50th, I usually go by and visit them as well. And so I fit in a whole number of things. So it's pretty full day.
Oh, that's good then. I understand there's some talk about the brush cutting in on the Burgeo Road.
It's been an issue for quite some time, not on this end so much as on the other end, with TransCanada, of course. And Council and myself both wrote to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and the Minister of Transportation to see who would be able to help out with the matter. Because you notice on the TCH they use these big mechanical things and they do the brush cutting. And that was what we had hoped to be able to get done. So we approached the ministers, and one passed it to the other, and they kept passing it back and forth. to the point where they finally identified that, yes, there was quite an area up on the other end of the route, the Burgeo Highway, that does need brush cutting. The problem is they never gave sufficient money. It takes $3,300 to do 1 hectare of brush cutting. That's their figures that they use. One hectare costs $3,300. In order to do all of the brush cutting that's needed on the Burgeo Highway, it would take over $700,000 to do it right, according to their figures. They gave us $25,000. So I mean, it was an insult. It was a pittance, and they expected it to be done by people on a job creation program rather than using these mechanical harvesters. So the town, quite rightly, I believe, refused the money to say, how do we administer, $25,000 when it takes $700,000 to do it?
Yes.
And not only that, you just can't get people up there. By the time you start your work day, to take people from Burgeo, to transport them up 150 kilometers to start even doing the job, I mean, it's just not the right way to go about it. So the town said, quite rightly, I believe, that this shouldn't be a municipal responsibility anyway. It's 150 kilometers from Burgeo. Why should the town of Burgeo have to be responsible for cutting brush along the highway? So anyway, that's the approach they took. We went back to government and we said, look, the brush needs to be cut. It's a safety issue. It's a hazard to anybody using the highway. We've had several accidents there involving moose, where the brush is overgrowing the highway, places where you can't even see the road signs along the highway. So the town went back, and myself went back to the government and said, look, this is just not proper. You need to do it, but do it right. So that's where it is now, that they gave this insulting sum of money, as I call it, to try to do a job, basically, that couldn't be done.
Oh.
So we're gone back now and said, look, rather than put this responsibility on the community, why don't you handle it through your normal highway department and works and transportation and do it that way? So that's where we're hoping now, is to get it done, or get something done, but get the government to do it themselves, not expect the community to do it.
Okay, so you haven't heard back from them?
Haven't heard back. Again, we wrote to John Hickey, who's the Minister of Transportation, and said, look, enough is enough. I mean, there's a safety issue here. You have to get it done. I understand from talking to some people inside the department that the Burgeo Highway is a high priority for brush cutting, but the minister refuses to confirm whether that is in fact the case. But I understand, according to their own facts and figures, Burgeo Road is a high priority. So if that's the case, why don't you take your mechanical cutters that you have along the TCH and use them on the Burgeo Road? In a matter of a week or two, you could have it done.
Okay, very good. So is there any other issues that deal with Burgeo now that anybody got planned or anything?
There's always different things on the go with the council, of course, from time to time, in terms of infrastructure needs, going to government to get your capital works programs. Right now we're into what they call the job creation stuff, and the name they use on it now is Community Enhancement Program, which basically is if anybody needs a few extra hours to make up their stamps, different organizations in the community apply for government funding. We've managed to secure some. There's a project that's going to start soon now that the town council initiated, and there's also going to be one for the church here, the Anglican Church, and I believe there's going to be another one involving the Recreation Committee. So there's going to be 3 projects that are going to be starting up in the near future to look after these people who need a few hours.
Okay.
I'm pleased to say, unlike other years, we've had years down here going back to 99, 2000, 2001, when we had a lot of people who needed a lot of hours under these job creations. This year, it's my understanding from talking to Blaine at the town and other people around town that we may have a problem getting enough people who qualify to do the work, simply because most people, very fortunately I guess, have been able to secure work. Not necessarily in Burgeo, but we have a lot of people working with the seismic. We had people who go out of town and work in fish plants in Atlantic Canada. So there's very few people, as I understand it, who might actually need this type of employment this year. But the projects are there and they are approved.
So what about those that don't have any stamps at all? Like, will they fit into this anyway?
No, the criteria under the program is like if you need 920 hours, I believe, you won't fit under this. This is for people who need 420, I believe it is, in any given year,
Okay.
and they haven't gotten their full 420. They might
Okay.
need 100 or 200 or 300 hours. So the programs are designed to look after people who are normally in the workforce but didn't get enough hours this year.
Okay.
It's not designed for persons who haven't been in the workforce for quite a number of years and need the full number of hours. That's not the criteria.
So do you think there could be anything for those people?
Not my understanding. There's certainly nothing been in the works for years and years. There's never been a program that looked after anybody like first-time workers. You have to at least get in the workforce, be eligible for EI, but not have gotten enough hours, and that's when you click in. But there's no program the government has ever had that starts you from zero and starts you off.
Okay. All right then. Also, I was going to ask you about the new logo for the province. What do you think of that?
Pretty costly. We're going to cost over $1 million. Personally, I didn't think we needed one. Apparently, this was an idea that the Premier came up with when he was at some conference, and he didn't think that we stood out as much as the rest of the provinces or the other provinces. So he decided we should have a new logo, and it's very costly. I don't think it's been totally accepted. A lot of people don't like this stylized picture plant, and they don't think the picture plant adequately represents us as a people. And there were people who had problems with the fact that there were other symbols that could have been used, whether it be a moose or a caribou or the fish or seal even or whatever. And so there's been a lot of controversy about it. My personal opinion is I don't think we needed it, and I don't think we needed to spend over $1 million on trying to create a new brand.
Okay. Let me see. Yeah. Also, the Premier Williams met with Prime Minister Harper about the equalisation, and there was some discussion on his reaction towards that. What was your opinion on that?
Well, I think it's quite clear, if anybody reads the legal piece, that the Premier and Mr. Sullivan, when they negotiated the accord, all the I's weren't dotted and the T's weren't crossed, because if they had been, it would have stated right in that document that even if you change equalization later, it should not negatively impact upon the Atlantic Accord. But obviously that wasn't done. And now there's a problem and a concern, because if the federal government changes the equalization formula, it could indeed take away any benefits that we would normally get under the Atlantic Accord. So the Atlantic Accord was a great achievement by the Premier, no question about it. But there seems to be this big loophole there that the federal government may use now, i.e. the equalization piece, which could counteract everything that we achieved under the Atlantic Accord. Now, the Premier got quite upset. I guess that's a matter of style. He seems to be very combative in a lot of issues, rather than negotiate stuff that's either my way or the highway, it seems. Personally, I think there's a need and a time for a different approach. I don't believe there's anything to be gained by publicly beating up on the Prime Minister. We need a Prime Minister in our corner. I understand he didn't say that we weren't going to get what we needed. So if somebody is not yet decided, why would you bully them or beat them up right off the top? To me, you should keep talking to them. And if the Prime Minister changes his mind and doesn't keep his commitment, well, then it's time to beat up on him. But meanwhile, I don't see the need for a bullying tactic, and we see a lot of that from the Premier. Personally, I don't think his style is what we need. It's one thing to be aggressive. There's one thing to be very firm and to insist that we get our rights and that you maximize the benefits for the province. But it's how you go about it. And we've seen a case where, in the case of the judge, for example, some months ago, he, talking about judges who got out of the wrong side of the bed, and accusing Mr. Rulock, who was going to be appointed to the CNL-OPB, of being unpatriotic, and saying that such and such needed a fastball up the side of the head, and his arguments with Ibram Ben Nevis, and basically drove ExxonMobil out of the province and Chevron. And I think that combative style, there's a place for it. But sometimes if you drive away everybody that you're dealing with because you're so combative, we as a province, I think, stand to lose rather than gain. So there's a time to be firm, but I think his style leaves something to be desired sometimes as well. Everybody believes in standing up for Newfoundland and Labrador. That's not the issue. But I don't think you always need to be pounding your chest to prove that. And I think sometimes his style leaves something to be desired, and I don't think you need to be a bully all the time.
Okay. All right then. I was also going to ask you through this, could you explain a little bit on equalization for those of us who are not so politically inclined to know what it means?
Well, I guess the simple explanation of equalization is that we in Canada, there's say 10 provinces and some territories, everybody pays a certain amount by way of taxes into the federal pot.
Okay.
And the federal government, in turn, distributes that back out to the provinces, called an equalization payment or a transfer payment.
Okay.
So the rich provinces are putting more money in. For example, Ontario and Alberta are putting money in, whereas Newfoundland is taking money out.
Okay.
So what you're trying to do is equalize across Canada the situation so that every resident is basically treated fairly by the federal government. So some pay in because they're wealthy, and some receive because we're not so wealthy. We as a province, we receive transfer payments from the federal government. What the federal government are talking about doing is changing that formula. And based upon the recent study that was done called the O'Brien Report, we as a province, if that report is accepted, stand to lose.
Okay.
From what we're getting now, we will get less from the federal government. So the Premier is quite right in saying to the federal government, don't change the equalization formula and don't accept the O'Brien report as it is written, because if you do, we as a province are going to lose. So that's why he's quite right in saying that. But the point the Prime Minister is trying to make is that we haven't accepted the report yet. We need to go have these discussions. The provinces and the federal government haven't sat down yet to have those discussions. So let's not go beating each other up until we've had the meetings and we've had the discussions and decide where we are going to go. It may be unnecessary. If the O'Brien report doesn't get accepted, for example, there will be no need of having a fight because we won't be negatively impacted.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Just appreciate the opportunity again, and anytime you have any questions, whether it be, like you say, of a provincial nature or anything of a local nature, by all means, feel free anytime to give me a call, and I'd certainly be more than happy to speak with you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Try your luck and play TV Bingo on Wednesday, sponsored by the LLBA. Cards are 6 for $5 and can be purchased from the LLBA members or in most stores around town. This concludes our program for tonight. Please stay tuned afterwards for a rebroadcast of the Bandwagon from January 1993. Thank you for watching. Good night.